Hello, my people. This is Dr. Wayne Hayde, the Watchman, on the 22nd of July, 2025. And I want to delve into the Interpol watch list and the alleged stopping of Dr. Keith Rowley through the airport in Antigua, and to tell you there is much more than what has been said. And in that I mean that the Commissioner of Police had made a statement with respect to the incident in which he indicated clearly that a check of all records showed no evidence of Dr. Keith Rowley being placed on a watch list from Interpol. Now, that may sound to be complete, but that's not the whole truth and the facts. There are a lot of things that you need to understand about Interpol and how it operates to understand that it is quite possible that Dr. Rowley could have been flagged and stopped and treated in that manner because somebody put his name into the system. Now, let me start by saying, technically, there's no watch list. People use that colloquial term to mean that your name is on a list where they can watch and see it, basically. But Interpol operates as an international police organization where there's cooperation and coordination amongst law enforcement entities in different countries to ensure that criminals and those who have other bad intentions cannot slip through the cracks from one country to another. So Interpol has a system that is called a notice system, the Interpol notice. And notices are given out throughout the entire world. Once a notice is put into one country's system, it is reflected all over the world. So, what kind of notices are there? You have red notices where they're seeking to arrest a person who is wanted for prosecution or running away from a sentence. The red notice will inform all countries about that person. We have to assume that in the Brent Thomas case, a red notice was issued to inform the Barbados authorities that Mr. Thomas was in Barbados and was wanted. That's a separate issue that we're going to deal with, but we have to assume that a red notice was done in that instance. You have blue notices in which they collect information on the identity and the location and the activities of particular persons who coming from one country to another, so they could track them, especially if they believe that they'll be engaged in some criminal activity. You have yellow notices that they use to locate missing persons who don't know who they are or where they are. Black notice to identify dead bodies. Green notice, right, that they could inform a country about any person or thing that could be an impending threat. Orange notices to warn about some event that could happen that could have an impact on the country that or any other country in the world that receives the notice. Silver notices that to trace criminal assets. You have purple. They have a number of notices, all of which serve different purposes, but the main purpose is to warn other countries about individuals who will be traveling through their countries. And once these notices are issued, there are strict protocols in Interpol where it is put into the system and flagged to everybody. So therefore, if you look for any of these notices and you don't find any evidence, you can easily say, well, Dr. Rowley was not flagged because his name doesn't appear in any of the notices. But that is only on the surface. Underneath, there's an informal system called diffusion, in which they share the same information, but not with everybody. One country can share that information with another country. And even though technically it's supposed to be put into the system in the same notice form, It doesn't always work that way. And sometimes countries deliberately do it informally, but it does not appear in the system to show that the person has been flagged. And it is quite possible that that could be the process that was used. So therefore, that informal system serves to defeat the entire purpose of having a strict regime of entry and collation and referral and review that Interpol attempts to use. But it can go in and it can go from one country to another. So let's say Trinidad to Antigua, to inform them under the diffusion system to watch Dr. Rowley or somebody else who may come in the country. And it goes further than that. It becomes even more informal because people have contacts in other countries. Law enforcement entities in one country like Trinidad will have contacts in Barbados and other countries. They train with them, they interact with them, and they could informally tell them to go ahead and flag somebody. So I call my partner in Antigua and I tell him, check on that man there for me because I feel he coming to do something and we want to know where he going and what he going to do. And that person could put the individual's name into, let's say, the airport system. So whenever their passport appears there, it is flagged immediately. But it's not part of the formal Interpol system that the commissioner looked under. Additionally to that, you have informal practices by these officials where they bypass the established procedures and they use methods that are not recognized by law or by process. And we could talk about the Brent Thomas case, where they used the CARICOM warrant system that they have not yet implemented into law in all the countries to make it effective, but they use the same process by which to go and arrest Brent Thomas in Barbados and bring him back on a plane from them back into Trinidad and Tobago. That is why the Barbados authorities were talking about, oh, the gentleman agreed to surrender and go back. But he couldn't do that if you were not operating on the CARICOM warrant system, which you were not. But you're using the same procedure that has not been legalized. So the bottom line is that the commissioner probably does not know of these informal processes that exist in which Dr. Rowley could have been flagged and targeted for somebody checking. Now the question is why? It could be that one country suspects that he might be engaged in some activity that they want to track, because it doesn't have to be Trinidad and Tobago with a diffusion notice or an informal notification. It could be the United States. It could be the United Kingdom. They could do on a one-on-one. Let's say the United States may submit these diffusion notices or contacts to 5 different countries about a particular individual or individuals. And each of those countries don't know that the Americans are communicating with the others. So it's a one-on-one basis. And that could be a way of tracking persons when they come into and out of the countries. And the worst way is the totally informal method by which people talk to their partner in another country and get them to flag people, tag them, and identify them and surveil them. And let me tell you, Dr. Rowley himself, as a former Prime Minister, knows or ought to know that these things are possible when we're talking about intelligence systems, law enforcement agencies, and government processes. This is part of what happens all the time, and people don't talk about it. But now we're talking about it because Dr. Rowley got flagged. Now the question would be, what do we do now? Well, the commissioner ought to ask the correct questions, and somebody should ask Dr. Rowley more additional questions as to what exactly happened and how did he know that he was flagged or tagged. This is serious because we had the Brent Thomas matter where Mr. Rowley was the Prime Minister at the time, and they did an unlawful process to bring back a person, not that person alone, but several other persons were you brought back and forth using that same method. So let's see the investigation done into everything so we can know all that's happening underneath. I hold no brief for Dr. Rowley or anybody, but I did not like the way that he threw the police service under the bus, in my opinion. He put the police service on blast as if they were intentionally part of the process of flagging him and tagging him. They might be, and he might very well know where it's coming from, because as a former Prime Minister, he will know where all the bones are buried. This is Wayne Hayde, the Watchman.